everyone. My name is Sean Hendricks, and welcome back to the Autodesk Theater NAB 2011. In this presentation, we're going to be looking at the Autodesk Maya Entertainment Creation Suite with Flare. So you're going to see a lot of functionality in all of these products, and the key thing I want you to take away in this particular presentation is that with the Maya Entertainment Creation Suite, you're getting access to a huge number of portions of the typical pipeline in any production. So you can see here we're going to be taking on everything from pre-visualization to motion capture to pre-comp, compositing and finishing. Once you get down to the Flare side, there's just a huge amount of functionality that comes with this suite. And really the power of the suite is it combines a few different products. So in this particular case, if you look, with the Entertainment Creation Suite, you're hitting animation, 3D modeling, and sculpting thanks to both Maya as the base platform, Mudbox as a sculpting, modeling, and texturing tool, and then you have Motion Builder, which allows you to do real-time motion capture control cleanup. Between all of these and the new one-click workflows that we've released over the last little bit, you now can move your data seamlessly back and forth between the products and very, very quickly get things done sitting on one station. We're also going to be looking at Autodesk Flare near the end of the presentation. Flare is a companion seat to Flame. So if you have a studio that already has a Flame in-house, very economically you can add flares to that seat, which allow people like your top 3D artists to get in and start doing pre-comp work and start prepping things for the Flame, basically getting all that same power that your Flame artist has in the hands of other artists around your facility. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to hand over to Daryl Obert, who's going to look at the Maya Entertainment Creation Suite.
Thanks a lot, Sean. So what we're going to be looking at today, again, is the Entertainment Creation Suite, and we're going to be using Maya sort of as a hub to branch out to these other applications. We've already got some work done inside of Maya. We've got a base character, and we want to begin further refining the feel of this character and the look of him by using Mudbox to add that final sculpting and texture detail to him. And I'm going to use a single-click workflow to get this piece of geometry over into Mudbox. So all I have to do is go to the File menu, go to whatever application I want to send it to. In this example, we're going to be sending it over to Mudbox. I'm just going to add it to the current scene. Now, I've already got a scene loaded up inside of Mudbox, so we basically just took this information that was in Maya and pushed it in there, including the same camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to view through the camera of the native camera in Mudbox, and we want to begin painting textures on this character. It's important to realize that this character does not have any UVs. So very early on in the process, what we can do now is we can bring our characters into Mudbox and begin using Ptex to paint the textures on them. Ptex is a really cool state-of-the-art technology. It's an open source project that started out of Disney, and it gives us this flexibility to paint UV-less on top of objects. So what we're going to do is go ahead and select this character really quickly and add a Ptex setup to it. So with this character selected, you can see that at a Ptex resolution of 1 million textiles, so basically each face becomes a subdivided textile. At the base resolution, it's equivalent to a 1.3K texture map. If I start to increase the size of this, you can see that we can go all the way up to 124 textiles, 124 million textiles, which would essentially be an 11K map just for this one piece of geometry at its current tessellation. Now for this example, obviously we don't need to write out a 12K map. We're going to go ahead and oh, I didn't want to hit done on that. Let's undo that really quickly. Actually, we can recreate that Ptex. Hopefully the undo works on that. So let's just decrease that guy down to 1 million. So with that done, we're going to go and we're going to subdivide this character a few times. So if I hit my Shift-D key, you'll notice that he looks a little bit smoother. We're further refining this, and this subdivision process actually makes the Ptex textures work a little bit better and makes them slightly more uniform. So now our character is all set up and ready to begin receiving paint information, and we're going to use some of the paint tools to do this. We're going to look at several different examples of ways of painting texture maps, and then we'll start looking at sculpting. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw your eye down here to the bottom of the screen. This is essentially my tool bin, so I have a variety of different painting tools that I can use. Then to the right of that, we have the modification of the currently selected tool. So what's the tip of it look like? The fall off of the brush? What type of stamp might you have on this repeating texture map that's going along the edge of that brush as you lay it down? Or in some examples, what type of stencil are you painting through? So for this first thing we're going to do is we'll just grab a brush that's got a little texture map on it, kind of rotate around here, and I'll just start painting some texturing information. Actually, let's go to our paint layers here. And let's create a new paint layer. So we're going to create a new Ptex paint layer. We have the choice all the way up to 32-bit full float. For this example, again, we'll just keep it kind of simple and use an 8-bit layer. So we'll just start painting across that object. Let's grab a brush here, a paintbrush. And you can see that as I start painting on this object, obviously I'm stamping this texture map across it. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and jump back and look at how we can use projection brushes to really take examples of real live objects, real source footage, and use those to help your painting process. So we're going to go and jump into our image browser, and let's use a bookmark to jump over to some stencils that I have set up. So I have a variety of different stencils loaded in here that I can use to begin painting with. Obviously, we're doing color, so I'm going to just take this picture of this chameleon that I got off the internet, set this as my stamp. I'm going to go ahead and flip this horizontally and jump back to our 3D view. And now I can just use a simple hotkey to begin positioning this stamp that we're going to be using as our projection paint brush. So all I have to do is obviously look at the help, the online help here. You can see that it basically tells me to hold down my S key to begin interacting with this stamp. So I can just simply position it. Maybe we'll just go ahead and move my character a little bit larger here so that we can paint through that guy. So we'll zoom him up a little bit. I'll go back and hit that S key, begin positioning that, rotating it around, scaling it. So it's very, very fast and easy to go ahead and, let's see here, let's just spin this guy around, reposition him up here, scale him down a little bit more. I just want to line this up so that it's basically on top of that, and we can just begin projecting through that. So you can see how fast and simple it is to take already existing objects or already existing imagery and use that to aid you in the painting process. So the next example that we want to look at is maybe painting something that we're just going to use as a luminosity value that we want to paint a specific color through. So again, we'll jump back to the image browser. I'll go and I'll just grab something like this scale base. That looks pretty cool. We'll go ahead and we'll set that as our stencil. We'll jump back into our 3D view. Again, I can use those same tools to begin positioning that. So holding down my S key, middle mouse button to begin dragging. What we want to do is we want to paint just paint color through that. We'll go ahead and we can use our eyedropper to go and pick a color, maybe a similar green up here. We'll jump back into that paintbrush. And you can see now as I begin painting through that luminosity map, we basically receive the texture information from it with the color that I've set. So that's 3 different ways that you can paint. You can just grab a brush that's got a repeating stamp on it. We can grab a projection brush and paint color. Or we could grab another stencil and use our own specific color to paint through that stencil. So now that we've looked at the painting work, let's go ahead and talk about sculpting and how we can use this similar pen brush-based workflow to begin adding very fine detail to the overall bumpiness and relief of this character. So what we'll do is we'll go and we'll select this character and get rid of it. I already have one that's loaded up in my scene that's got some other stuff already applied to it. So we'll use that as a nice starting off point to keep the demo moving quickly. So we'll just display that guy. And it'll take just a second to load him in. We'll turn the eyes on also. So obviously this is the finished character, and what I want to do is show you how we got to this end result. So the way the paint system works inside of Maya, or inside of Mudbox, is very similar to any other layered-based paint application. Essentially, you're stacking layered information on top of each other. You can go back and turn on and off those layers, adjust their blend modes just like you can inside of Photoshop. So we've got the display of a lot of different paint information on this guy. We can turn off the diffuse and the tail stripes and the stomach and the body. So again, these are just layered textures that we could adjust the opacity level for and also the blend modes for them. You can see here it's our list of drop-down blend modes that are Photoshop compliant. So we're going to go ahead and turn off all the texture information because really what we want to look at for now in this example is how we can add sculpting detail to this character. So if we jump out of our paint layers and look at our sculpt layers, you can see that we've already got a couple of sculpt layers added on here. So we've got some scales that were sort of painted on the guy, some extra wrinkle maps, and then a full body texture map. So what I want to do is show you the workflow to kind of get to this overall effect. Let's just jump back down to this base layer right here. This is the layer that I'm going to be painting on. And I'm going to bring in another stencil. And this time we're going to bring in we'll bring in something similar to what we saw before. Let's go ahead and just grab something like that guy. Let's load that up as my stencil brush. So we'll jump back over to our sculpting tools, get back into our 3D view. And maybe I'll just hit my S key and we'll scale that guy up a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. With my sculpt brush set, let's go ahead and grab that guy. Let's make sure that we're not using a stamp on that. My strength is nice and kind of low. So you can see as I start painting across this, I'm just adding that nice texture detail. Obviously, if I wanted that to mirror across my character, I can simply turn mirroring on. And we can just begin moving around this character and sort of adding in this subtle detail. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and use a wax brush to start adding in some of these wrinkles and show you how we approach at doing that. So let's turn off the wrinkle layer that was already there. We'll zoom in on our character's neck ever so slightly. And I'm going to switch my brush from the sculpt brush type over to a wax brush. I'm going to decrease the size of that wax brush a good bit. Let's decrease the magnitude of that guy a little bit. I don't really need it to be quite as strong as it was. And I'm going to change the fall off of the brush to this very kind of abrupt fall off. And I can just start simply painting in these nice little wrinkles, maybe decrease the brush size a little bit more, holding down my B key and just clicking down there. Let's increase the magnitude of that a little bit more. Let's get that brush sort of right about there, increase the magnitude, and just start adding in these sculpts. If I hold my control key, I do the reverse of that. If I hold my shift key, I go in there and I start to feather. So that's really the process that was used to sort of add these little wrinkles and details underneath this neck. So again, the idea is you have a variety of different brushes, they behave slightly different, and they give you this ability to start adding all of this really cool subtle detail to our character. So let's go ahead and turn those paint layers back on and look at how we can use those to assist us in painting some other details onto this character. We're just going to move over here to the back of this guy, and I want to start adding a little bit of relief, maybe where some of these more pronounced bumps might be. And we're going to change our brush type one more time. This time we're going to go over to a bulge brush. So let's grab that bulge brush. We'll change our tip profile to something that's kind of blown out there, kind of this big, heavy, fat, rounded off brush. Again, I'll just increase my brush size ever so slightly, decrease the magnitude on that, and I'll just start building up these nice little bulges sort of in that area. So you can see how fast and easy I can add all this cool detail, either using texture maps that I'm projecting through, or in this example, painting on top of already existing color information to go ahead and get the overall look and feel that I might need for this character. And that was really all the process that was used to ultimately get to this end result that you see here. So we'll just kind of zoom out on this guy a little bit more and transfer him around. So when we're done with this, if you remember, everything that we started off we were doing on this Ptex texture, if we want to get that information back onto a character that's got UVs or onto a different character, we can just use our transfer maps. So if we go ahead and bring up the maps and say new operation, we have the ability to do a transfer paint operation. So what this does is it's not just baking that information out. We can do that, but if we use the transfer maps mode, it basically includes all those layers, all those paint strokes, all that history gets taken from one character and put onto another character, and they can actually be dissimilar characters. So it's a really powerful tool inside of Mudbox. So let's go ahead and shift our character down here. We'll just jump down to level 0 on this guy. Let's make sure that we have him selected. And page down. Let's go ahead and jump over to our paint layers, turn on our bump, our specularity, and our normal. And the last thing that we want to do is we want to just take this character and send him over to Maya. So if I do, again, use a single-click workflow to do this, we can say send to Maya. Now I'm going to say add to current scene because this is a different version of the character. He didn't already exist in the scene, so there's nothing to update there. But if I had the same node name and I said update, it would just take all that work that we did and essentially add it into the scene. So you can see it's popped Maya forward to me. Again, this is the power of the single-click workflow. And there comes my character with all that cool painted information that's on him. What it did is it actually went through and it made a texture map for me in a shader for me. So if we bring up our Hypershade window and we just simply graph this, you can see there's all that information. There's all those maps, the normal map, the color map, the specularity map, the reflection map. All that information comes along for the ride with the single-click workflow. So let's go ahead and delete that guy. We really don't need him in our scene anymore. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to begin getting this character ready to be animated. So we'll jump over to a texture mapped version of him. I've got a skeleton sitting inside of my scene already, and that skeleton's got the character that's been bound to it. So there's some relationships of the weighting of the vertices that make that character up to these bones. We want to animate this character, and I want to use a very high-level control to do that. We're going to be using the Human IK algorithm to animate this character. So the first step when working with Human IK is teaching the solver about the hierarchy of your skeleton. So you do this every single time you create an HIK rig. Let's go ahead and bring up our character controls window. Characterization tool, please load for me. It's the last demo of the day, so I'm really hoping that this tool pops forward. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Had a little refresh issue there, but nothing too major. So what we have here is we've got this characterization tool. We want to begin making a relationship between the bones in the characterization tool and the bones in my Maya viewport. And this is extremely fast to do. I just double-click on a bone and then swipe match it to the corresponding bone in the Maya viewport. So you can see I can just start walking through my character and making these relationships. We have the ability to work with templates. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. If you've got pipeline that's set up that uses consistent names for your skeletons, you can do this process once, save that template out, and reuse it over and over again. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and use the HIK template. It's worth noting that we have preset templates already laid out for you for cat and biped coming from 3D Studio Max. And I know that my character is an HIK skeleton, so we'll just go ahead and apply that HIK template, and you can see that all of my bone mappings has been filled in properly. So we no longer have a red stop sign up here in the right-hand corner. We're now presented with a warning. So this is letting me know that I've filled in the right bones, that my base requirements have been met as far as my bone matching is concerned, but there's still maybe some issues that I want to address before we go ahead and lock this character off. And you can see right here, it's telling me that my right arms aren't parallel to the x-axis. You want to get your character into a T-pose. This kind of zeroed out T-pose position is what gives a tool the flexibility to seamlessly transfer information from one character to another character. So this is a really easy problem to fix inside of Maya. We'll just go ahead and select both of these joints, and we'll just rotate those arms up. And once I get them pretty close to that zeroed out pose, I overshot it there. It registered just for a second. We can go ahead and we can lock this character off. So now that we've done that, we can create the control rig. Now the control rig really is where the magic happens in the human IK solver. Let's turn that guy on. This is a full body inverse kinematics rig. It allows me to pose my character using both FK and IK. So what does that mean? Let's go ahead and look at the character controls window. The character controls window gives me a very elegant interface for interacting with this rig, or in this character. So I'm going to turn off the FK bones and the display of the IK bones, because I can just use my simple character controls window as my selection, as an easy way to select these nodes. So if I grab this hand and I begin moving this in a body part mode, notice that what's stroked in the character controls window gives me a visual representation as to which bones will be keyed, as well as which bones can be influenced with my current selection. So if I grab this hand and I begin moving it around, I'm positioning it using inverse kinematics. I'm basically doing a positional movement, and it's inversely calculating those rotational values to match that position. Pretty straightforward. A lot of times when you're posing characters, you want to use FK. You want to just grab one of those bones and jump into a rotation tool to begin positioning it. So at any time, if I'm in a rotation tool, I'll be using forward kinematics. Obviously, if I jump back to my translation tool, I'm then back switched to using inverse kinematics. So it's a very powerful tool for posing your character. The next thing that we want to look at is what happens when we enter into full body mode. So full body mode, this really is what human IK is all about, right? IK, everyone's done that forever. What full body mode does is it kicks on this human IK algorithm, which basically has the ability to transfer that energy past the body part. So if I overextend this arm, it can pull that energy all the way through the shoulder, and it behaves in a very realistic manner, the way a biped would behave. Notice the effect if I grab this foot and begin moving it. The body basically drops down. Notice that this foot's pinned. The reason that foot's pinned is because any one of these IK handles at any given time while I'm posing, I can turn on and off its ability to pin. So let's go ahead and look at the same effect that we have if we knock this hand down. Notice what's happening when I move the foot. That hand basically kind of goes along for the ride. This hand's dropping down also. If we go and we select that hand and I enable the pinning state for it, and I now begin moving that foot, you'll see that it's basically stuck in space. Both its position and its orientation, because I locked both translation and rotation for that node. So these pinning and unpinning states really give you a very fast and easy tool when you want to begin layering animation or animating your character using the HIK rig. So now that we have this setup done, what we want to do is we want to begin applying some motion onto this. And in this example, we're going to be using Motion Builder to do that. Motion Builder is a really awesome tool, and we're going to get into it using that same single-click workflow. So let's just go ahead and get this guy back to his stance pose so that he comes into Motion Builder in a nice default T-pose. And all I have to do, again, is use that single-click workflow. So we're going to send a Motion Builder this time. I'm going to say, update current scene. So as soon as I do that, you can see Motion Builder pops forward. Just like that, we're now viewing through that same Maya camera that we had. So you saw my view kind of change there. And you can see that we now have this same character with that same rig. Notice that the character controls window looks the same as it did inside of Maya. And that's because it actually is the exact same user interface. It's actually the exact same tool. So the character setup that we just saw in Maya and the interaction with the character controls window is the exact same workflow. This is really what's important about this suite is you don't feel like you're jumping between completely dissimilar ideas, right? If you're working in Maya or you're working in Motion Builder, the hotkeys are the same. The look and feel of the user interface is the same. The actual characterization tools in the HIK rig is the same. It's worth noting that Motion Builder and Maya both are based on the QT interface that gives us the ability to create panels that can be torn off and then redocked. Any custom tools you make can also be torn off and docked into the UI. So it's a really great toolkit for laying out your UI. So what we want to do with this character is we want to begin animating them. And the reason we're going to do this in Motion Builder is because if you're doing virtual production, this is the tool of choice to do it in. It's a real-time engine. Everything that we're doing inside of Motion Builder basically works in real time, and it has the ability to have a bunch of real-time streams coming in. So your optical motion capture data, your facial motion capture data, live video in for reference footage from the take so that you can embed that into the scene. It's all based on a take system, so I can just create new take, new take, new take, and it's all recorded into that one system. Because when you're doing motion capture, there's a good chance you're not just going to do the take one time. You're going to say, we're trying to capture this shot. We're going to go through a series of different takes. Any audio that you take is now tracked with those clips, and it's really, really powerful. Obviously, if you want to work with line time code, we have the ability to do that. That line time code can be tagged onto any of the attributes in your scene, so you can track that metadata through your pipeline all the way into post. So what we're going to do in this example is we're going to retarget some motion capture data onto this character, and I'm actually going to be using optical data. Now, obviously, we don't have an optical stage here, but what I've got is I've got some optical data that was recorded out to disk. So we'll go to the asset browser, just view this and make sure we grab the right one here. We'll merge this in here. So what I've got now, let's go ahead and just translate my little lizard across the side here slightly. Okay, wrong one. So we can... Yeah, come on. Deselect everybody. There we go. Yeah, it's not working. All right. Let's just go ahead and play this back. So we've got this optical data. You can see that guy kind of dancing around there. And what the actor really is it's the ability for Motion Builder to take these marker points. So these little marker points on those hands and those feet, those guys are basically the little balls. If we go ahead and we source our actor here, kind of see what's going on with this. Those little positional information are basically the optical tracking points. The workflow is you drag and drop those optical tracking points onto the regions in the actor, and then Motion Builder has the ability to basically take all that random positional information of those optical markers and turn it into a human IK solvable rig that we can basically then use as our source for our retarget. So essentially that would be the live input coming in. In this example, again, we're just streaming it off of disk, but it's the exact same workflow. So we'll go ahead and jump over to our character. We'll jump into our source for this, and instead of being that control rig, we're going to have it being dragged around by that actor. So if we replay this, again, what we have here is a retargeting that's happening on the fly in real time. Now, what Motion Builder tries to do by default is it's trying to match joint angle. Basically, remember we talked about the HIK rig being able to work with HK, or forward kinematics and inverse kinematics at the same time. That's really important when it comes to retargeting, because we want to use kind of FK in certain areas and maybe IK in other areas to get around some of the limit or some of the problems that you have when you're trying to retarget information from very dissimilar sized characters. So obviously, if we play this back here, this guy's dancing along in Vegas, and when he does this little hand flip here, he puts that arm down. You can see that my lizard's arm's obviously a little bit longer. So if I'm matching joint angle, and you can see that the angles all exactly match up, his hand really is passing through that ground a good bit. So what we want to do is we want to basically, for a couple frames there, say, I'm not so worried about matching forward kinematics or joint angle. I want to match the inverse kinematics or the world position, sort of where that IK handle should be. And again, this is something that's extremely fast and easy to do inside of Motion Builder, and that's why we're here. So what we want to do is just go forward to a frame right about there where his hand's passing through the ground, turn on that match position. We'll just hit the S key to keyframe that. We'll come back here and we'll just zero that out so it kind of bleeds on there just for a few frames. And right about here, you'll see that if I leave it matching that world position, his hand kind of looks a little bunched up. It doesn't really look as natural or as realistic. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go back here a few frames, keyframe that one more time, and then we'll just zero out those attributes so that he goes back to matching the FK or the forward kinematics. So it's that simple to take some motion capture data that works on a biped that's human scale and modify it to work with my lizard that's obviously got drastically different proportions to arms and the limbs and things like that. So that's the advantage of Motion Builder, the power of Motion Builder, and the speed at which it works. So a couple other things really quick worth mentioning is, because this is a real-time system and it's really tied toward doing performance animation, we have a very sophisticated set of tools for evaluating exactly where your performance hits are coming from so that you can make changes to make sure that you never drop below a minimum threshold. We also record the information at multiple frame rates. So if you're doing a motion capture take, you can be streaming in your video source that you're going to use as a reference at 24p. You might be doing your body motion capture take at 60 frames per second and maybe the facial at 120, and it all just works because we have the ability to take that line code in. So now that we've got that done, The next thing that we're going to do is take this information and bake it onto that control rig. So if we go back to our character, I want to get that retargeting information back onto that HIK system, that control rig, which gives me the flexibility of layering more tweaks on top of it. So we'll bring this up. We're going to make sure that we plot this back out at 30 frames per second. Bam, 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 just like that. So now if we play it back, it'll basically look exactly the same. We really don't need to see that actor anymore. We can go ahead and hide that guy. And we can hide that stuff right there and just play this back. So what we've done is we've retargeted our character. We've got it pushed back onto that control rig that gives me the ability to send this information back to Maya. The last thing that I'm going to just briefly mention is the fact that Motion Builder now has a stereo camera rig. If we drag and we drop this inside of our scene here, you can basically get an idea of what this stereo camera rig does. It has the same controls and attributes as the Maya stereo camera rig because it really is the exact same rig. So when we're sending this FBX information back and forth between Motion Builder, Maya, and the creative finishing tools, we're always using the same FBX stereo camera. So it really does let you have a complete 3D production pipeline where you do your performance animation. You're actually setting the cameras up and figuring out your zero parallax planes very early on in the process. That information can be carried across into Maya and then ultimately into Flame or Flare or Smoke because they all understand this same stereo camera. So we're going to go ahead and take this object, this rig. You'll notice that I have this live connection to Maya. So all I have to do to send that all that animation that's on that control rig over to Maya is just simply click the Update Maya. And this is what the single-click workflow is again. We just take all that information, we send it right over, and just like that, we now have the same exact animation that was inside of Motion Builder now applied to our character in Maya.